The rain was relentless that night, hammering the roof of the old craftsman house like it wanted to break through. I was sprawled on the couch, half listening to the storm, when Ethan's text lit up my phone. "Come over. Need to talk." 5 words that flipped my world upside down. I'd known Ethan Harper since we were kids. The kind of best friend who'd sneak you pizza rolls when your mom said no junk food. We grew up in this sleepy Ohio suburb, where the biggest drama was who got picked for the varsity soccer team. But Ethan wasn't the one texting me tonight. His older brother, Caleb, was. Caleb, who'd always been a mystery, a quiet shadow in the Harper household. At 23, he was 2 years older than me, with sharp cheekbones and eyes that seemed to see right through you. I'd spent years stealing glances at him, my heart doing stupid flips whenever he'd flash that rare, crooked smile. But he was Ethan's brother, off limits, untouchable. Or so I thought. I pulled on my jacket, the storm's roar muffling my thoughts as I jogged the 3 blocks to their house. The Harper place was a mess of cozy chaos, mismatched furniture, dog-eared books, and the faint smell of lavender from Mrs. Harper's candles. Ethan was out with his girlfriend, Sarah, and their parents were at some church retreat. Caleb was alone. The thought made my pulse race as I knocked. "Come in," Caleb called, his voice low, almost lost in the rain. I stepped inside, shaking water from my hair. He was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch, a glass of water untouched on the coffee table. His dark hair was messier than usual, like he'd been running his hands through it. "Thanks for coming, Lucas," he said, not meeting my eyes. I didn't know who else to tell. "Tell what?" I asked, dropping onto the couch beside him. My stomach nodded. Caleb wasn't the type to overshare. He was the guy who'd fix your bike without a word, who'd listen to Ethan and me ramble about dumb high school drama without ever joining in. But tonight, something was different. His hands were shaking. He took a deep breath, like he was about to jump off a cliff. "I'm gay," he said, the words spilling out fast, like they'd been trapped too long. "I've known since I was 15. But I couldn't say it. Not here. Not with my family." His eyes flicked to mine, raw and searching. "You're the first person I've told." The room spun. Caleb Harper, the guy I'd secretly crushed on for years, was gay. And he was telling me. My mouth went dry. But before I could respond, he kept going, his voice cracking. "I've been hiding it forever, Lucas. From Ethan. From my parents. From this whole damn town. But I can't anymore. I'm suffocating." I wanted to reach for him, to say something profound. But all I managed was, "Why me? Why now?" My voice sounded small, like I was 16 again, nervous around him at Ethan's birthday parties. "Because you're safe," he said simply, his gaze locking onto mine. "You've always been different. Like you see people for who they are, not what they're supposed to be." His words hit me like a punch. I'd spent my whole life feeling like an outsider in this town, too quiet, too artsy, too soft for the jocks and the church crowd. But Caleb saw me. And now, he was trusting me with this. The storm outside seemed to fade as we sat there, the weight of his confession settling between us. I didn't know what to say, but I knew what I felt: a mix of hope, fear, and something dangerously close to love. "Caleb," I started, my heart pounding, "I'm glad you told me. I'm here. Whatever you need." He nodded, a ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. "I don't know what happens next," he admitted, "but I couldn't keep it in anymore. Not from you." We talked for hours that night, the rain a steady backdrop to his story. He told me about the fear of being found out, the nights he'd lie awake wondering if his parents would still love him, if Ethan would understand. I listened, my own feelings tangled up in his words. I'd never told anyone I was been at Ethan. Not my parents. But sitting there with Caleb, I felt the urge to confess too. To meet his vulnerability with my own. I didn't. Though. Not yet. The moment was his. And I wasn't ready to risk what we had. Whatever it was. By the time I left, the storm had eased, leaving the air heavy with petrichor. Caleb walked me to the door, his hand brushing mine for a split second. "Thanks, Lucas," he said, his voice soft but steady. It means everything." I walked home under a clearing sky, my mind racing. Caleb's secret was a spark, and I didn't know if it would light a fire or burn everything down. But one thing was clear, nothing would ever be the same. The next morning, I woke up with Caleb's words echoing in my head, each syllable heavy with trust. I lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of my bedroom, wondering what I was supposed to do with his secret. It wasn't just his truth, it felt like a door had cracked open between us, one I was terrified to step through. I met Ethan at our usual spot, the diner on Main Street, where the coffee was cheap and the pancakes were legendary. He was already there, sprawled in a booth, scrolling through his phone. "Yo, Lucas," he greeted, barely looking up. "You look like crap. Late night." "Something like that," I muttered, sliding in across from him. Ethan was all broad shoulders and easy grins. The kind of guy who made friends without trying. We'd been inseparable since 5th grade, when we bonded over a shared hatred of dodgeball. But now, sitting across from him, I felt like a traitor. His brother had trusted me with something Ethan didn't know, and it was eating me alive. "You good?" Ethan asked, finally noticing my silence. His brow furrowed, and for a second, I panicked, thinking he could see right through me. "Yeah, just didn't sleep much," I lied, stirring my coffee. I wanted to tell him about Caleb, to bridge the gap between the brothers. But it wasn't my secret to share. Instead, I changed the subject. "How's Sarah?" Ethan launched into a story about their latest date, and I nodded along, only half listening. My mind kept drifting to Caleb, his nervous hands, his quiet confession. I wondered what he was doing now, if he regretted telling me. Part of me wanted to text him, to check in. But what would I even say? "Hey, still thinking about your life-altering secret?" After breakfast, I headed to the community college where I was taking art classes. The campus was a mix of old brick buildings and sprawling lawns, a small escape from the town's suffocating sameness. I was sketching in the courtyard when my phone buzzed. "Caleb, can we talk again? Tonight?" My heart did that stupid flip again. I typed back, "Sure. Your place." His reply was instant. "Yeah. Ethan's out. 7 p.m. The rest of the day dragged. I couldn't focus on my sketches, my lines smudging as my thoughts wandered. By the time I got to the Harper house, my nerves were a mess. Caleb opened the door before I could knock, like he'd been waiting. He was in a faded flannel, sleeves rolled up, and his eyes were brighter than last night, less haunted. "Hey," he said, stepping aside. "Thanks for coming back." "Anytime," I said, meaning it more than he could know. We settled in the living room again. The same couch, the same faint lavender scent. But tonight felt different, less like a confession, more like a conversation we'd both been waiting to have. I couldn't stop thinking about last night. Caleb said, his voice low, "Telling you, it's like I can breathe for the first time in years. But I'm also freaking out. What if Ethan finds out? Or my parents?" He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "They're so traditional. Church every Sunday. Family values stuff. I don't know if they'd get it." I nodded. My own fears bubbling up. My parents weren't exactly progressive either. Mom still called my art degree a phase. And Dad thought anything outside the norm was a sin. I get it, I said. This town, it's not exactly a safe space. Caleb laughed. A short, bitter sound. That's an understatement. You know how many times I've heard Pastor Mike rant about the gay agenda at church? Every time, I felt like I was shrinking. He looked at me, his expression softening. But you didn't make me feel small last night. You made me feel like I could be myself. My throat tightened. I wanted to tell him how much that meant, how much he meant, but the words stuck. Instead, I said, you don't have to shrink for anyone. Caleb, not anymore. He smiled, a real one this time, and it lit up the room. We talked for hours again, about everything: his fear of coming out, my struggles with feeling like I didn't fit in, the way this town seemed to demand conformity. Somewhere in the conversation, our knees brushed, and neither of us pulled away. It was small, but it felt like a promise. When I left that night, Caleb hugged me a quick, tight embrace that left me dizzy. See you tomorrow, he asked, almost shy. Tomorrow, I promised, my voice barely steady. As I walked home, the stars bright overhead, I realized I was falling for him. Hard. And that scared me more than anything. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Caleb and I started texting daily, small things at first, like memes or random thoughts. But soon it was deeper. Late-night conversations about dreams and fears. We'd meet up when Ethan was out. Always careful. Always at the Harper house. It felt like we were building something fragile. Something that could shatter if we weren't careful. One evening, we were in Caleb's room, sprawled on his bed with a laptop between us, watching some cheesy sci-fi movie. The room was a time capsule of his teenage years: band posters, a dusty guitar in the corner, a shelf of worn books. I was hyper-aware of how close we were, our shoulders touching. Halfway through the movie, Caleb paused it and turned to me. Lucas, he said, his voice soft but serious. Can I ask you something? My stomach flipped. Yeah, anything. Have you ever liked someone you weren't supposed to? His eyes searched mine, and I knew he wasn't just talking about hypotheticals. I swallowed hard. This was the moment to be honest or keep hiding. Yeah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I have. He didn't push, but his gaze held mine, like he was waiting for more. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. It's you, I blurted out. I've liked you for years, Caleb. Since we were kids. I just never thought you'd feel the same. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Caleb reached for my hand, his fingers warm against mine. I do, he said, his voice shaking. I felt it too. For a long time. Time stopped. He leaned in. And so did I. And when our lips met, it was like the world finally made sense. The kiss was tentative at first, then desperate. Years of unspoken feelings pouring out. When we pulled back, both of us were breathing hard, smiling like idiots. We're so screwed, Caleb said, laughing softly. Yeah, I agreed. But I didn't care. Not in that moment. But reality crept in fast. The next day, Ethan cornered me at the diner. You've been weird lately, he said, his eyes narrowing. What's going on with you? You're always busy, dodging me. I froze, my mind racing for an excuse. Just school stuff. I lied, hating myself for it. Ethan didn't buy it. I could tell. But he didn't push. Not yet. That night, Caleb and I met again. This time at a park on the edge of town, away from prying eyes. We sat on a bench under an oak tree, the air cool with the first hints of fall. We can't tell Ethan yet, Caleb said, his voice tight. He's my brother. But he's not ready. And my parents they'd lose it. I nodded. But it hurt. Hiding from Ethan felt like betraying him. And hiding us felt like betraying Caleb. What do we do then? I asked. We keep this ours, he said, squeezing my hand. For now, just be with me. Lucas, that's enough. It wasn't. Though. Not really. The secrecy started to weigh on me. A constant knot in my chest. I loved Caleb, and every moment with him felt like stealing sunlight. But the lies were piling up. I started avoiding Ethan, skipping our usual hangouts. And he noticed. His texts got shorter, his jokes less frequent. I knew I was losing him, but I couldn't stop. One night, Caleb and I were at the house again, curled up on the couch, when we heard the front door slam. Ethan's voice cut through the quiet. Lucas. Caleb. What the hell's going on? We sprang apart, but it was too late. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face a mix of confusion and betrayal. You guys, are you? He didn't finish the sentence, but the question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Caleb's face went pale. Ethan, I can explain. Explain what? Ethan snapped, his voice rising. That you're sneaking around behind my back. With my best friend. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The truth was there, but saying it felt like lighting a match in a room full of gas. Ethan's eyes burned into us, his fists clenched at his sides. The living room, once a safe haven for Caleb and me, felt like a battlefield. Talk, he demanded. Now. Caleb stood, his hands raised like he was trying to calm a wild animal. Ethan, just listen. I'm gay. I've been hiding it forever. And Lucas, he's the only one I trusted enough to tell. Ethan's jaw tightened, his gaze flicking to me. And you? You're just, what? His boyfriend now. Without telling me. I flinched. It's not like that, I said, my voice weak. It just happened. We didn't mean to hurt you. Hurt me? Ethan laughed. A harsh, bitter sound. You're my best friend. Lucas. My brother. Caleb. And you're both lying to me. Sneaking around like I'm some idiot who wouldn't get it. He turned to Caleb, his voice breaking. Why didn't you trust me? Caleb's eyes glistened. I wanted to. God. Ethan. I wanted to. But you know how it is here. Mom and Dad. The church. This town. I was scared you'd hate me. Ethan's face softened. Just for a second. But then the anger came back. So you told Lucas instead. And what? You're together now. That's why you've been ditching me. Lucas. I nodded, guilt twisting in my gut. I'm sorry. Ethan. I didn't know how to tell you. He shook his head, backing toward the door. I need space, he said, his voice cold. Don't call me. Either of you. And then he was gone, the door slamming behind him. The silence was suffocating. Caleb sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I knew this would happen. He whispered. I should have waited. I should have. Hey, I said, sitting beside him. This isn't your fault. We'll fix it. He just needs time. But I wasn't sure I believed it. Ethan was my best friend, the one constant in my life. And now I'd broken something I wasn't sure I could repair. Caleb leaned into me, his shoulder against mine. And we sat there, holding on to each other like we could keep the world from falling apart. The next few days were hell. Ethan ignored my texts, and Caleb was a wreck. jumping every time his phone buzzed, hoping it was Ethan but dreading it was their parents. I tried to be strong for him, but I was crumbling too. My art classes, once my escape, felt pointless. Every sketch turned into Caleb's face, his eyes, his smile, the way he looked when he was scared. One afternoon, I was at the library, trying to study, when Sarah, Ethan's girlfriend, found me. She was all sharp edges and no nonsense. Her blonde hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. "You messed up, Lucas," she said, sitting across from me without asking. "Ethan's a mess. He won't talk to me either." "I know," I said, closing my book. "I didn't mean for this to happen." She sighed, softening a little. "He's not mad that Caleb's gay. He's mad you both hid it. Ethan's big on loyalty. You know that. You've got to give him a reason to trust you again." Her words stuck with me. That night, I went to Caleb's, determined to figure out our next move. He was in the kitchen, making coffee, his movements slow, like he was carrying the weight of the world. "I'm going to tell my parents," he said suddenly, not looking at me. "I can't keep hiding. Not after Ethan." My heart sank. "Caleb, are you sure? They might." "I know." He cut me off, his voice steady but scared. "But I'm tired of lying. And if Ethan's going to hate me, I might as well rip the Band-Aid off with everyone." I wanted to argue, to protect him, but I saw the resolve in his eyes. "Okay," I said, "but I'm here, no matter what." He smiled, small but real, and pulled me into a hug. "I don't deserve you," he whispered. "You do," I said, holding him tighter. But deep down, I was terrified. This town, these people, they didn't take kindly to change. And we were about to light a match. Caleb's decision to tell his parents hung over us like a storm cloud. We spent the next few days planning, rehearsing what he'd say, but no amount of preparation could ease the dread. The Harpers were pillars of the community church, deacons, PTA members, the kind of people who hosted potlucks and prayed before every meal. Caleb was their golden boy, the quiet, dependable son. Coming out to them wasn't just personal. It was a seismic shift. The night he chose was a Sunday, after their parents got back from the church retreat. I waited at my house, pacing, my phone clutched like a lifeline. Caleb promised to text me after. Every minute felt like an hour. Finally, at 9:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. "It's done. Can you come over?" I was at their house in 10 minutes, my heart in my throat. Caleb opened the door, his face pale but calm, like he'd just survived a war. "They didn't kick me out," he said, leading me to the living room. "But it wasn't good." He told me everything. His mom cried, clutching her cross necklace, asking where they'd gone wrong. His dad just sat there, silent, his face hard as stone. They didn't yell, didn't disown him, but their disappointment was a knife. "They want me to talk to Pastor Mike," Caleb said, his voice hollow. "They think it's a phase, something to fix." I reached for his hand, my anger flaring. "You're not broken, Caleb. They're wrong." He squeezed my hand, but his eyes were distant. "I know, but it still hurts. They're my parents. You know." I didn't know. My own parents were a wild card. I hadn't told them about myself yet, and the thought made my stomach churn. But for now, Caleb needed me, so I pushed my fears aside. "What do you want to do?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Part of me wants to leave this town, start over somewhere new. But Ethan, I can't lose him too." We didn't have answers that night. We just sat there, holding hands, the silence both a comfort and a weight. I stayed until midnight, until Caleb's eyes started to droop, and I promised to come back tomorrow. The next day, I ran into Ethan at the gas station. He was pumping gas, his jaw tight, avoiding my eyes. I took a deep breath and walked over. "Ethan, can we talk?" He didn't look at me. "What's there to say?" "Lucas, you lied to me. Both of you." "I know," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm sorry." But Caleb was scared. And I didn't know how to tell you I'm bi. Or that I love him. His head snapped up at that. His eyes wide. "You love him?" I nodded, my face burning. "Yeah, I do." He stared at me, then shook his head, tossing the gas nozzle back. "I don't know what to do with that. Man, I need time." He got in his car and drove off, leaving me standing there, feeling like I'd lost him for good. That night, Caleb and I met at the park again. He looked worn out, like the weight of his parents' reaction was crushing him. "They're acting like nothing happened," he said. "Like if they ignore it, it'll go away. But I can't unsay it." "Lucas, you shouldn't have to," I said, pulling him close. "You're brave. Braver than me." He laughed softly, resting his forehead against mine. "You're pretty brave too. You know, you're still here." We kissed under the oak tree, the world fading away for a moment. But the world always came back, and it was about to get a lot louder. The news spread faster than I expected. Small towns are like that, secrets don't stay secret for long. Someone at church overheard Caleb's parents talking. And by Monday, whispers were everywhere. At the diner, the grocery store, even my art class. I caught people staring, their hushed voices dropping when I got close. Caleb was out, whether he wanted to be or not. He took it hard. We met at the park again, away from the gossip. "They're calling me into a meeting with Pastor Mike," he said, kicking at the gravel. "Mom and Dad think he can help me, like I'm some project to fix." "That's bullshit," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "You don't need fixing. Caleb, you need to get out of here." He looked at me, his eyes tired but fierce. "And go where?" "I've got no money. No plan. This is my home. Lucas, even if it sucks sometimes." I wanted to argue, to tell him we could figure it out together. But the truth was, I was just as stuck. Community college wasn't exactly a ticket to freedom, and my part-time job at the bookstore barely covered gas. Still, seeing Caleb hurt made me want to fight for him. For us. "Let's go somewhere," I said suddenly. "Just for a weekend. Get away from all this." He raised an eyebrow. "What? Like a road trip?" "Yeah," I said, warming to the idea. "We'll drive to Columbus. Crash at a cheap motel. See the city. No one will know us there. We can just be." Caleb hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." That Friday, we piled into my beat-up Honda, a cooler of snacks in the back, and drove the 2 hours to Columbus. The city felt like a different world, vibrant, loud, alive. We wandered through the short north, holding hands when no one was looking, laughing at street performers and eating greasy food truck tacos. For the first time in weeks, Caleb looked free, his smile unguarded. That night, in a tiny motel room with peeling wallpaper, we made love for the first time. It was clumsy and perfect, full of nervous laughter and whispered promises. Afterward, lying in the dark, Caleb traced circles on my chest. "I want this," he said. "You and me. Somewhere we don't have to hide." "Me too," I said, kissing his forehead. "We'll get there." But Monday brought us back to reality. Caleb's meeting with Pastor Mike was a disaster. The pastor quoted Bible verses, talked about healing, and handed Caleb a pamphlet for conversion therapy. Caleb walked out, furious, and called me. "I'm done with them," he said, his voice shaking. "The church, my parents, all of it." I met him at the park, where he was pacing, his hands in his hair. "I can't stay here, Lucas," he said. "Not anymore. But I don't know how to leave." "We'll figure it out," I said, pulling him into a hug. Together. That night, we started making plans. Real ones. Caleb had some savings from his job at the hardware store, and I could pick up extra shifts at the bookstore. We talked about moving to Columbus, finding a cheap apartment, starting over. It was terrifying, but it felt right. Then Ethan called. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat. All three of us. We met Ethan at the diner, the same booth where we'd shared countless breakfasts. He looked different older. Somehow, his usual easy grin gone. Caleb and I sat across from him, our knees touching under the table for courage. "I'm not okay with this," Ethan started, his voice low but steady. "Not because you're gay, Caleb. Or you, Lucas. I don't care about that. I'm pissed because you shut me out. You're my family, both of you, and you treated me like I didn't matter." Caleb's eyes dropped to the table. I was scared. "Ethan, I didn't know how you'd take it." Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms. "You could have trusted me. I'm not mom and dad. I'm not the church. I would have had your back." "I know," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorry." I reached for Ethan's gaze. "I messed up too. I should have told you about me. About us. I was just trying to protect Caleb." Ethan sighed, rubbing his face. "I get it. I do. But it hurts. Man, you're my best friend. And you." He looked at Caleb. "You're my brother. I want you to be happy, but I need you to let me in." We talked for hours, the diner emptying around us. Ethan wasn't ready to forgive us completely, but he listened. He asked about Columbus, about our plans, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of the old Ethan, the one who'd always had our backs. "I'm not saying it's all good," he said as we left, "but I'm not walking away either. Just don't lie to me again." Caleb and I nodded, a weight lifting but not gone. We hugged Ethan outside, a tentative, awkward embrace, but it was a start. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Caleb and I saved every penny, scouring online for apartments in Columbus. His parents were still distant, their conversations with him clipped and careful, but they didn't stop him from planning his move. Ethan started coming around more, even helping us look at listings. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. One night, as we packed Caleb's room, he found an old photo of the three of us, me, him, and Ethan, grinning at a county fair, cotton candy staining our fingers. "We'll be okay," Caleb said, tucking the photo into his bag. "All of us." I kissed him, my heart full. "Yeah, we will." 6 months later, Caleb and I were in Columbus, in a tiny apartment with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall. It wasn't much, but it was ours. I'd transferred my art credits to a state university, and Caleb was working at a coffee shop while figuring out his next step. We were broke, stressed, and happier than we'd ever been. Ethan visited often, his old grin slowly returning. He'd started dating Sarah again, and sometimes the four of us would hang out, laughing over cheap beer and bad takeout. The wounds were still there, but they were healing. Caleb's parents called sometimes, their conversations stiff but less cold. They weren't ready to fully accept us, but they were trying. And that was enough for now. One evening, Caleb and I were on our couch. A thrift store find that smelled faintly of someone else's dog. He was sketching in a notebook, something he'd picked up from me. And I was watching him, marveling at how far we'd come. You know, he said, looking up, I was terrified that night I told you. I thought I'd lose everything. You didn't, I said, leaning in to kiss him. You gained me. He laughed, pulling me close. Worth it. Outside, the city hummed. A world that didn't care who we loved. We weren't just surviving any more way we're living. And that, I realized, was the real secret we'd been chasing all along, the courage to be ourselves. Together, no matter what.